Depending on the format and style of your podcast, you might record an entire episode from start to finish in one take, moving naturally from segment to segment, or you may prefer to record individual segments and then combine them together into a complete podcast episode. Even if you do record almost entirely from start to finish, though, you'll probably want to insert additional content like music or a theme song or other information that you might want to include in every episode. So in this video, I want to take a look at how to import and arrange other content. I'm still working with a project I just edited in the previous video, which at the moment is just the interview segment. For this exercise, I've pre-recorded some additional content that we can import into the project. If you have access to the exercise files, you'll find them in the 0402 folder. First, I'm going to move my playhead back to the beginning of the project. That'll just make it a little bit easier to know where I'm importing all the files. And I'm also going to close the Smart Control window to have some more space to work in the project timeline area. So I'm going to move the GarageBand window over a little bit so I can see my desktop here. And this is where my exercise files folder is. And I'm going to open it to find the files. So here I have 4 audio files. We have an intro, a segment about our latest courses, a news segment, and a closer or outro segment. Now we could drag all of these into GarageBand at once, but I prefer to drag them in one at a time. So let's start with the intro. I'm going to drag that in and line it up to the beginning of the project. And I'm dragging it below the existing regions here. And when I release my mouse, that's added the file to its own track. I'm going to solo the track so you can hear it. Hi, I'm Garrick Chow, and welcome to the Tech Training Weekly Podcast, highlighting the latest and most popular courses released on our library each week. This week, we're focusing on our audio and music segment with a look at brand new audio recording courses, and I chat with producer Todd Howard to find out what goes on behind the scenes in the making of an audio and music course. Okay, so that's the intro piece. I'm going to unsolo that. And that's obviously going to go at the beginning. Now, because we're working with entire segments of the show here, I don't need to be zoomed in so much on the waveforms. So I'm going to grab the zoom slider here and we'll just zoom all the way out so I can see the entire project at once. And that's just going to make it easier to work with the individual regions and arrange them. Now, it's up to you to decide if you want each segment on its own track or if you want to combine them all onto a single track. I think in my case, since most of this podcast is just me talking, I'm going to try to put all of these pieces on a single track. That might make it easier to mix later. So first I'm going to highlight the 2 interview track regions to select them, making sure I get all the regions on those 2 tracks. And I'm going to drag them over to the right to make room for the other files I'm going to import. Now I can select this intro section we just dragged in and move that up to the Vox 1 track, which is the track where my voice was recorded in the interview. All right, let's grab the courses file next, which is a segment that talks about the new courses. And I'll drag that in right after the intro. Notice GarageBand popped itself to the front as I was dragging. Tries to make that a little bit more convenient for me. So I'll just drag that in and release. And let's listen to that. We have some heavy hitters this week with new videos from both Larry Crane and Bobby Owsinski. Larry continues to bring incredibly valuable tips in his weekly series, Music Production Secrets, and Bobby doles out yet another great set of studio tricks in his Audio Mixing Masterclass course. On top of that, Cliff Goldmacher has another entry in his 1-minute weekly songwriting tips series that's sure to inspire and encourage you to refine your own songwriting process. Okay, so that's the new courses segment. All right, and I think the interview segment is going to follow this, so let's select all those regions on those 2 tracks again. And I'll drag them back over to the left. And again, I'll line them up right about there. We don't need to listen to that again. The main thing is I wanted to make sure I got all of those individual regions. That way I don't leave any one of them behind by accident. Now I can finesse the spacing and timing between the segments a little bit later. Right now I'm more concerned about getting them in order. All right, this will be followed by the news segment. So I'll drag it into the first track again, and that will be followed by the closing or outro segment. And let's listen to those. This week, Wave Machine Labs announced an update to their popular iPad digital audio workstation, Aria Pro. With support for real-time audio warping, MIDI editing, and a virtually unlimited number of tracks, Aria Pro continues to be a viable alternative for moving professional music production from the desktop to the iPad. For more information, visit ariaapp.com. For more information, visit wavemachinelabs.com. And that does it for this week. Be sure to check back next week as we focus the spotlight on our business segment and see what's new in the latest versions of Microsoft's Office suite of applications. Until then, I'm Garrick Chow, wishing you happy learning. Okay, and those are the two remaining segments. Now, in the news segment, I mentioned two websites at the end. When I recorded this, I wasn't sure which website I should use, but I've since decided that I want to use the second one, which means I should go in and delete the first one. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see the waveforms. So here's the part I'm talking about. For more information, visit ariaapp.com. For more information, visit wavemacinelabs.com. So I want to keep that second one there, so I need to cut out this first section. And this is just like the editing we did in the previous movie. So I'm going to click to place the playhead before the section I want to get rid of. Make sure that region is selected, and I'll press Command-T to split that region. And I'll come over to the other side, and again press Command-T. Now previously, I showed you how to delete an unneeded section by selecting it and just hitting delete, and then manually dragging over the rest of the regions on the right to close that gap. Let me undo that with Command-Z. But a shortcut you can use is to have the region you want to delete selected, and then come up to the Edit menu and choose Delete and Move. And you can see that deletes the region and automatically shifts everything over to close that gap with one click. And you should always test to make sure the edit sounds good. Pro continues to be a viable alternative for moving professional music production from the desktop to the iPad. For more information, visit wavemacinelabs.com. So I'm hearing a little bit of a breath there, so let's fix that edit by trimming this in a little bit and trimming this one over. Now I do need to select these two regions to bring these together, and let's see how that sounds now. Production from the desktop to the iPad. For more information, visit wavemacinelabs.com. Okay, so I was able to eliminate those breaths, and now the edit sounds a little bit better. I could go in and finesse it a little bit more, but I think you get the idea. So now my podcast is pretty much in its complete order. I am going to select this track down at the bottom and then right-click on it and delete it since we don't need it anymore. Now, let's say you've recorded your podcast, but maybe you're not sure this is the order you want the segments to appear in the course. Because we're using GarageBand, we can take advantage of a feature called the arrangement track, which is normally used for labeling and rearranging sections of a song, but we can also use it here for our podcast. I'm going to come up to the track menu, and here I'm going to choose Show Arrangement Track. So we now have this arrangement area above the track regions. The first thing I have to do is label each section. So let me zoom back out again. And I'll scroll back to the beginning. I'll click the plus button here in the arrangement track. And you can see that puts an intro arrangement area up here. I'm going to drag its right edge so that it spans over to the edge of the intro section. It's already named intro, and if I click this menu, I'll see some other things I can name it, but you can see these are all related to songs. We have verse, chorus, bridge, and so on. So when I add the next arrangement area, I can again expand that over. And this time I'm going to choose to rename it, and I'll call this Courses. We'll add another one. This is going to span the entire interview section. So I'll drag its right edge over there. Rename it Interview. I've got two more to add. Now, because I split the news segment up, I'm going to make sure I drag to the end of that news segment. The arrangement markers do snap to the ends of the regions, but even if you didn't split your podcast into regions and just made one long recording, you can still use the arrangement markers. Call this News. And we'll add one more for the outro. It's already named Outro. I'm just going to drag its right edge in a little bit. And there it is. I'm going to zoom out again so we can see all the segments. So now with each of these sections labeled, it's easy to see each segment of the podcast. But this also gives me the advantage of being able to easily arrange the segments. So for example, if I'm thinking that the news should come right after the intro, I can click the news label. Now be careful not to click on the word news itself or it just opens up that menu again. But I'm going to click somewhere on either side of it so my mouse cursor looks like this, and then I can just drag it over. So you can see both the regions under the news section have been moved and it now follows the intro. And if I think the interview segment should then follow the news, I can move that as well. Notice both tracks of regions under that area are moved. Basically, any regions currently under the arrangement headers will be moved along with it. Now, what you have to be careful about is if there are any regions that span multiple arrangement sections. For example, if you have music running underneath the entire podcast. In that case, if you were to move a section, the music would then be split up and out of order. So don't use the arrangement track if you have any tracks that are running through the entire recording or through multiple segments. Or alternately, use the arrangement track to organize your podcast first, and then add your music or overlapping tracks after you've made up your mind on the arrangement. In this case, though, I think I prefer the original arrangement, so I'm going to press Command-Z a couple of times to get back to that arrangement. And there it is. Okay, so now I have all the pieces of my podcast episode, and they're in the order I want. Next, let's see about adding some music to the episode to make it a little more interesting.